welcome to this Balance webinar titled Your Guide to Navigating the Holidays in Recovery. My name is Allison. I am the lead intuitive eating coach here at Balance, and I'll be your moderator. While we're waiting for more people to hop on, if you could just drop your location in the chat. We'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. And we'll be getting started in just a few minutes. All right, so I'm seeing some locations coming through. Thank you so much. Just so everyone knows, throughout the webinar, please feel free to share your questions in the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. We will be taking live questions, so you don't want to miss out on that opportunity. So yeah, for those who are just joining us, just drop your location in the chat box and we will be getting started soon. All right, thank you for taking the time to log on today. Like I said before, my name is Allison and I will be your moderator today. Just by tuning in, you are putting energy towards learning about yourself and getting support that you or someone you know may need. So you are in the right place and you are welcome here. So we are so happy to have you here with us. If you have any questions during the presentation, like I said, please submit them through the Q&A panel. We will be answering live questions along the way, and we will also have time set aside at the end for questions as well. So please feel free to share thoughts and reactions in the chat, and then also using that Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. And we will also be updating the chat with additional resources and info later on, so keep an eye out for that as well. And don't be shy, we love to hear from you. And we would love for this to be an opportunity to connect as well as inform. All right, so without further ado, I think we can get started. I would like to introduce our presenters for today. Today we have Danielle Levitine, our VP of Admissions and Clinical Services, and Quinn Haisley, one of the dietitians here at Balance Eating Disorder and Treatment Center. So I will pass the virtual mic over to you both.
Thanks so much. Welcome to the Holiday and Recovery webinar. One of our goals today is to help you really identify what your needs through the holidays are going to be, help give some tips for some potential events that you might face. And we're actually going to also do some live prompts during this webinar, so you have time to really reflect on what might come up and what you might need. I am here to say that Thanksgiving is just 2 weeks away.
So soon.
Really is coming up. We are truly in the holiday season. We know that we're already being marketed basically for New Year's, and it kind of really doesn't stop from this point. So I'm really glad that you found us. I'm really glad that you're, making this time to put some effort into this, because it's going to be here before you know it. All right. As Allison said, my name is Danielle Levitine. I oversee all the admissions and clinical work here at Balance. I still run a group in the partial hospitalization program, also known as our day program, that runs either Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday. So I love continuing to stay involved with the clients and helping everyone on this road to recovery. Quinn, you want to say what you do at Balance?
Yes, definitely. So hi, everyone. I'm Quinn, one of the dietitians at Balance, pronouns are she, her, hers. And I help mostly to run our evening IOP program. I also run a couple of our outpatient groups. So I help to run the food and mood group, and I also help to run the LGBTQ group here at Balance.
Amazing. All right. So as we were talking about in the title, the holidays are difficult to navigate. Holidays typically mean that there can be an abundance of food around, depending on how your family or loved ones might celebrate the holidays, but we want to normalize that is something that's going to happen in the next 2 months. And depending on if you're just trying to figure out whether you do have an eating disorder, whether you do know that you have a disorder and are struggling, or maybe you do just struggle with body image, body distress, or difficulty eating consistently, the holidays can bring up a lot of stressors for any of those struggles. We also find that diet and food talk can really increase during the holiday season. People typically see more of their family and loved ones, depending on your relationship with them. The interactions can become challenging. And in general, the stress usually will increase. And another place you might be in is in recovery from an eating disorder. Maybe, you have done some work and you just want to make sure that you don't fall back into unhelpful behaviors. I think a combination of the fall and the winter with the holiday stress sometimes can be a recipe for relapse. So it's important to make sure you have your supports and you have a plan, because preventing relapse is really, really important and can really change the course of your recovery process.
Okay, so to go over just very briefly what it is that we're going to be discussing today. So first thing is going over how you can help to create your own holiday recovery plan, including some action steps that you can take going into the holiday season. I think it's really helpful to have that plan in place so you don't feel like you're just kind of flying blind going into the holiday season. We're going to talk about what you can do both before, during, and then also after any kind of holiday event to really set yourself up as best as possible, because we really want to make sure that, again, everybody goes into this season feeling as confident as they can, because we all know that it can be a difficult season.
All right, so next up, we really are encouraging you to grab a pen and paper, or if you're on your computer and you live a completely digital life, pull up something on your computer or your phone, maybe in notes. We want you to create a holiday plan and be able to access it. So go ahead and take like 30, 60 seconds, whatever that takes for you to really commit to opening up that note on your phone or a piece of paper, and take some time to identify what your needs are for recovery, for challenging behaviors, for reframing thoughts. It's okay to journal pretty openly. You might cross out some goals or some needs, but definitely in the brainstorming stage, no ideas are to be judged. We already have our first opportunity here this afternoon of practicing no judgment, self-compassion. Just try to be honest with yourself right now. Set 1 to 3 goals for the holiday. And at Balance, we use SMART goal, realistic goal. That means a goal that's attainable, somewhat measurable. And like I said, try to make it realistic. I'm going to reach out when I have an urge. Might be more realistic to, I will have no behaviors throughout the rest of the year. Be realistic with where you are now. a lot of the work that we're going to do today is around identifying potential triggers, starting to list out resources you have and resources you want. All the holiday movies will be coming out, all the visuals about the holidays that really aren't realistic could be coming out. So again, come back to that SMART goal, to those realistic triggers. Completely changing a relationship with a loved one is not probably possible on your own in a really short period of time. So what can be acceptable to you today that's going to make you feel good about reaching that goal? There's a lot of pressures with an eating disorder to be hard on yourself, or be really critical, or be mad at yourself for not being able to do this on your own. So I can't reiterate enough. Find those moments of self-compassion. All right, we're going to hop on to the next slide, but we do absolutely encourage you, if you're open, to share what any of your needs or your goals or triggers. We're happy to continue to tailor this webinar for particular circumstances that you might face in this holiday season.
Okay, so to go over a little bit more how you can really set yourself up the best for the holiday season. Again, first is just really think through all of the steps that you need for your holiday plan, really laying out a timetable for everything. What is your days, weeks, next couple of months going to look like? And create a list of resources that you might need to help prevent a relapse. That could look like going through a relapse prevention plan with your treatment team if you have one. It could also just look like getting a list of resources for yourself that you know that you can reach out to. I do want to sort of remind everybody that while you might be going to visit family or go on vacation or travel during the holiday season, clinicians might also be doing the same thing. So you need to also remember that the treatment team that you do have might not be as easily accessible during the holiday season. So how can you plan for that? Always helpful to ask a therapist or a dietitian or a doctor if they are going to be out of town, how best to reach them. If there is, sometimes people will have, an emergency contact number that you can have at the office, or an alternative person that you can contact if they are going to be out of town. So always good to plan in advance who will actually be able to be accessible during that holiday season. And again, coming up with that relapse prevention plan with the team can really help set you up. So with setting up a team of providers, knowing, do I have adequate support? Is there maybe a gap in my treatment team that I would like to set up? So maybe I have a therapist, but it would be really great to have a dietitian right now, or I don't have a doctor that I think I can rely on right now. So really trying to complete that treatment team so that you feel like you have that solid support system. Think additionally to a treatment team, do I have other people who can be a support in my life right now? Do I have friends or family members that I can reach out to for support? So building as much support around yourself as you can. Reaching out to any kind of new or current provider ahead of the holiday season. And then also having contact numbers like our contact number. So for anybody who is interested, I always think it's good just to have as many contacts as possible, any kind of like bases that you can touch throughout the holiday season. So that is our phone number on the screen right now. If you would like to either take a picture of it, write that phone number down, put it into your phone contact right now. Again, just having a list of contacts can feel like you're helping to support yourself as much as possible.
Yeah, we're happy to say that Balance is closing for Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day and New Year's Day, just those 3 holidays, but all the days leading up to it, all the days right after it, when we know that clients can feel a little bit more distressed or maybe feel a little more vulnerable. We are around. So like Quinn said, feel free to save that phone number into your contacts in your phone. We will be available. And I also want to normalize what you said, Quinn, around, maybe you're a place in your recovery where you decrease the amount of time that you see your dietitian or your therapist. Maybe you went every other week, or, maybe in the summer, you talked with your treatment team and you're taking a break from your dietitian. But if you have a lot of events coming up, if you're already starting to feel your stress around food, what you should or shouldn't eat, what you should have in your house, what you shouldn't eat, all of those shoulds, we are willing to do, short-term care, whether that's having that robust background of support while the holidays are going through. If you want to work with a dietitian for a little while to get through this time, as long as you're open with us around that, that's something that we can accommodate. And the telehealth waivers have also really changed, hopefully as COVID numbers continue to go down. So it's really important to connect with your provider and see if you're going to be, in New York for the holidays, if they will continue to see you, or like Quinn said, they might actually be, say, away for 2 weeks or something like that. We always want to talk to your providers in whatever state you're in before you start working with us. So as much as we're happy to take your call the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and etc., really take this time to make that plan so you have the most comprehensive and the best support in place. We're huge collaborators here at Balance, so we want it to feel really seamless of whoever you're working with to whatever kind of coverage that you would need. All right. So throughout the webinar, as Allison said, you're welcome to pop questions in there, and Allison can bring, questions that she thinks is relevant. If anyone wants to share either in the chat or have Allison share what potential triggers might be that you were able to identify, or also goals that you came up with, so we can help keep you accountable and give some tips for how to make that happen. But really figuring out who your trusted and reliable people are at the events you'll be attending, as well as with your support team. I know a handful of people that I've worked with can take a long time actually to open up to their therapist and tell them about their struggles with food or body. I think it's for a range of reasons. I think it could be about, fear of being judged or viewed differently, or fear of not having that relationship anymore. But I absolutely recommend, if you're struggling with your relationship to food or body, this is the time before we get into the thick of the season to tell your providers. If you are struggling with behaviors, do make sure everyone knows. We have a list of primary care physicians who specialize in eating disorders. I know there's often the most fear about being open with your doctor. We talk in many of our webinars about how most medical professional doctors are not trained in nutrition, and we really ask that you don't take that advice from them and work with our wonderful educated dietetic team. But we have resources to help you open up about your struggles and get that support in place. I really encourage you to try to take this next couple of weeks and really be honest with your team. We're all clinicians that are trained to help you. So kind of lay everything out on the table so we really know what we're working with and can get a plan in place. And then start to look at your community. Telling a provider sometimes is, just as scary as telling a loved one. So maybe you're going to take these next 2 to 3 weeks and, okay, there's one family member and there's one friend that I'm going to open up about my eating disorder. And I haven't, because otherwise you're going to find yourself dealing with this alone, and the eating disorder already is isolating. So you want to have some people in place that you can call out to, and remind yourself that it's not that you're going to be utilizing your friend as a therapist. It's not that you're even going to be necessarily talking about your behaviors or particular foods, but just to have someone to talk with to help get out of your own head, I think is really helpful.
Okay, so a little bit more on, again, just how to prepare yourself as best as you can. Be ready to reach for your holiday recovery plan. So I always think it's really helpful to have something, again, as Danielle was saying, whether that's pen and paper, whether that's on the computer, on the phone, actually writing out what your recovery plan is for the holidays so that you have something that you can go to in the moment. I think a lot of times, especially if something either unexpected pops up or something that's especially anxiety inducing or distressing pops up, it can be hard to think of that recovery plan in the moment. So having something written out that you can refer back to can be really helpful just in case something does come up. Really remember to be compassionate with yourself this season. The holidays can be really tough, and knowing that it is reasonable that it might be more of a struggle during the holiday season. And it's okay. Again, more just how can I plan as best as I can? How can I make sure I have the support system that I need? And if something does happen, if there's a lapse, if there's a relapse, really being compassionate with yourself about that and just knowing that you have a support system there in case something does happen. Give yourself permission to enjoy the moment. I know we keep talking about like, oh, the holidays are so hard, it's going to be such a struggle, but there's also really a lot of beautiful things and fun things about the holiday season. So don't psych yourself out too much. Don't just catastrophize everything. More of the, okay, how can I, again, look through what's going to come up, plan as much as I can, but also give myself the opportunity to enjoy the things that I'm doing, because that is also a huge part of the holiday season. Be ready to reach for your, again, the holiday recovery plan. So not just having it there, but like, okay, yes, I can use it whenever I need it. Let go of the notion that you have to be happy. That idea of it's the holiday season, everybody should be happy 24/7, everything should be great all the time. Unrealistic, also not very human. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're not. So knowing that it's valid to have whatever emotions or feelings that are popping up for you, you don't have to feel like there is that pressure to be on and be happy and joyful all the time during the holiday season. And kind of going off of what Danielle had said earlier, being really realistic with your goals and your expectations for yourself. So set expectations that not only feel good for you, but also feel really realistic for you so that it doesn't turn into setting either goals or expectations for yourself that don't actually feel realistic, because in the long run, that could make it much more difficult to be compassionate with yourself. So trying to set as realistic of expectations and goals for yourself as possible.
All right. So if you are reflecting back right now at that piece of paper, that note on your phone, or that document on your computer, these are the last kind of moments to really think about setting your mentality. So if you want to jot anything else down about why you want to get more brain space back this holiday season, what's really important to you. If you have kids, you really want to be spending that moment with them on a holiday morning versus thinking about what you are going to eat the rest of the day, or what you ate last night, or any behaviors that you might have had. Set that mentality, which often connects to what is my why for recovery. There's so much that we lose in an eating disorder, and there's so much to get back. And maybe this holiday season, you're just going to be open to more feedback from providers that you trust, and just more open to help, so you don't feel so isolated this holiday season.
So also, when it comes to preparing and setting that mentality, allow yourself to say no. It's okay to say no, whether that's maybe a holiday party and you're like, you know what, I just don't have the emotional or the mental energy right now to go to that holiday party, or I don't have the capacity to prepare a dish for something, or I don't want to see that many people during the holiday season. Know that it's okay to say no to things if that is in the best interest for yourself. I think another really great thing to do with a treatment team is to figure out how best to say no to things. Like, how can I, if somebody asks me to do something or to be somewhere and I don't feel like it's in my best interest to do that, how can I feel comfortable saying no to those things? Because it can be really hard to do that, especially with friends and family, where you feel like there is pressure to say yes to everything that people are bringing to you. But learning how to say no when it really is going to help you in recovery in the long run. Focus on gratitude. Always a big fan of coming up with things that you are grateful for. They don't have to be big things, they can be small things. But that practice of, again, I'm a big fan of writing things down. If you can just jot down during the day things that you are grateful for. If you want to have a gratitude jar, I love that idea of like writing down some things that you're grateful for, sticking it in some piece of paper, and then sticking it in a jar so that you can pull it out during the day. But that can help to really put you in that mental space of like, okay, even if things seem tough, here are some things that I am really grateful for right now. Be very intentional about how you are going to spend your time. I think this also goes along with the allowing yourself to say no. If it feels like it's too much to make too many plans with people, that's okay. You don't have to do every single thing that comes up during the holiday season, because there can be a lot of like parties and events and things happening. And I think especially during COVID times, it has felt very overwhelming for a lot of people to like get back out there and do a lot of things. So be realistic with yourself with that expectation of what actually feels like I can go and do versus what feels like it's going to be too much for me during the holiday season. And then prepare for things that are going to be out of your control. We know that during the holiday season, we don't always have control over the types of foods, for example, that are going to be served, what the preparation style is going to be. So knowing that there might be some things that are outside of your control, that are unexpected. So again, reinforcing, talking with your treatment team about how you can prepare for those things of, okay, if I go to a party and I don't know what's going to be served at that holiday party, how can I prepare for that? Are there some safety backups that I can have for myself? What things will feel like it's the best and most realistic goal for myself if that is the case? So preparing as much as you can for those unexpected things that could also pop up.
And the dietitians are so helpful. If there's things that you know, like my aunt always makes this dish casserole, and I don't really know how this meets my meal plan. Depending on where you are, you know, in the process, it just ask your providers all of those questions. If there's anything that we know is coming, we didn't know COVID was coming, but we do know holidays are coming, so we want to try to prepare as much as possible. I can't reinforce what Quinn said around allowing yourself to say no. It's actually an exercise that we do at Balance in terms of writing out all the different ways you can say no. It's really, really helpful. Eating disorders convince you to be indirect in your communication most of the time, right? The eating disorder is expressing things for us that we don't feel comfortable saying or protecting us in some type of way. So really looking at verbally how you say no and writing it down first is so helpful. What we find in that exercise that we do in program here is, you know, you might write an email, I just don't know if I'm going to make it to the holiday party and I'll get back to you. And most likely you don't get back to them. And it just stays vague and indirect. So if there is too much on your agenda, you're not going to be able to practice self-compassion or self-care. That is one of the biggest reasons that people relapse. Putting everyone else before themselves, overscheduling themselves, worrying about others instead of themselves. And there's really nothing wrong with saying, I can't make it this year. I hope to see you next year. And we're here to support you through. If that brings up feelings of guilt or worry, that's the work that we do here at Balance. So start talking about it now, because you deserve to be free of some of these thoughts and behaviors. Or if you're already on your road to recovery, keeping it active.
And Danielle and Quinn, we actually have a quick question coming in. So the question is, how do you handle the waiting period for higher level of care during the holidays?
That's a great question. I want to reassure for everyone that we are in a mental health crisis right now. There are wait lists throughout the United States. So if you have any, doubts that you're struggling or judgments about struggling, you are so not alone. I want to reflect that back from the work that we are doing at Balance. More people are really reaching out and struggling right now. There are some, I'm going to talk about Balance. There are some things that we do at Balance, I think as a smaller facility. If you have, treatment team in place in terms of like having a doctor that we can work with, we are often able to do meal supports as one way to get acquainted with Balance while waiting for the wait list to open up. Asking your therapist if it's possible to meet with them maybe 2 to 3 times a week while you're waiting. And similar to how we're talking about setting up your recovery plan, we really do individualized care here. So I don't have a general answer, but if we talk to you one-on-one, we'd be happy to set up what your, small attainable goals are until you're getting on the wait list. I know it's a really vulnerable spot to be. The eating disorder is going to tell you to utilize behaviors until you start treatment. And no, treatment is really not what anyone expects. And we're absolutely not shaming around here, or, we believe in the all foods fit model. So really try to challenge any of those urges that, you need to get it out now before you start treatment. You might end up needing a higher level of care than what the wait list offers if you go down that path. So try to see what either meal supports or increased therapy services you can get. It's only going to help you further prepare for program. I always like to highlight, we do a 90-minute session with our dietitians before clients join program, so you have an idea of what the meal plan will look like. If you're on a wait list, obviously we don't expect that you are all of a sudden following the meal plan, but there is some work that you can start doing around that before you start the treatment. Quinn, you could probably talk to that a little bit. I think it just makes the process easier.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely had clients that I've worked with where while they're waiting to step into one of our programs, if there's a wait list or if there's another reason why we can't start them in program right away, that they can still meet with me. We can still have outpatient sessions together so that we can start to make some of those steps towards how can we make that transition into a higher level of care as smooth as possible. I think also don't disregard how important it is to sometimes just maintain stability during a period of time.
Yes.
So it might not be you have a ton of improvement as you're waiting for a higher level of care. It could just look like I just want to stay stable while I'm waiting for that higher level of care step up. Definitely, like Danielle said, there are other supplementary things to add in, like meal supports. There's also tons of support groups that you could go to. So I am also a big fan of looking for those resources that you can add into your week. If you can have something like a check-in of some kind every single day during the week, that really helps set you up. So I know I have a therapist one day, and then I have my dietitian another day, and then I have a support group another day. So just having those check-ins during the week can be really useful while you're waiting to step up to a higher level of care.
Exactly. Really increases that accountability.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, we have action steps. Again, if you want to screenshot this, if you want to write this down while we're still on this slide, these are some action steps that you can take. I think we've really shared the first one. Have your recovery plan. You can take some moments now. If some things don't seem realistic as we're talking about it, or you want to adjust your goals, keep looking at that piece of paper and tweaking it for what you need to be. What are your goals? What are your triggers? What supports do you have in place? Keep working that recovery plan right now so that you're able to pull it out and ask questions when you're struggling to put something in there, or if you're struggling not being sure which one to add there. Quinn and I can help you figure it out. The second one is to think about a self-soothing box that's going to be accessible to you. So whenever we're feeling overwhelmed, when stress is increasing, honestly, the, chemicals in our body are changing. You want to have grounding skills, and do not underestimate relying on your 5 senses. So when you're getting into your thoughts and when you're getting into your head, you are typically detaching from your sense of smell. Just even generally, can I feel my thumbs touching my fingertips? Can I feel my feet and my toes on the ground right now? If I'm sitting outside, which is pretty likely, even though it might be cold, depending on where you're going to be, that you might need to step out of the family or friend party for a couple minutes. Or you might need to, go into your car. And sorry, I need to turn on the light here 1 second. Can I notice that the light is changing in the room? Or can you feel the wind on your face, or the change in temperature when you go outside of that holiday party? You want to take medications, Quinn?
Yeah. So making sure that you have the medications that you're going to need. Not only is that like packing medications, but also making sure if you're going to need refills and you're going to be out of town, can you plan for that so that you're like not in a frenzy trying to figure out how to get a medication refill if you're not in your current place where you usually go? Do you need to transfer a prescription to a different place? Can you plan out, do you need to bring like pill boxes with you so you can remember what day it is that you're having to take a pill? Is there a reminder you can set on your phone for yourself? So not only just remembering to pack the medications, but also planning ahead for that and making sure that you consistently take them during the holiday season too.
And totally reasonable to tell your psychiatrist what your travel plans are going to be.
Yeah.
Because they might send you a longer prescription until the next visit. I want to throw in generally with medications as well. If you are really thinking the holidays are going to be a big stressor and you're hitting an obstacle to saying no, and you do think that you might be seeing more friends and family that could be triggering, if you have a trusted loved one, sometimes you might want to have them hold your medication. I just want to put that in there, depending on what level you're struggling with. I think that could be helpful. Or you might have your refill for January or December, but you might want someone to hold that for you if that's in your best interest through the holiday season. The next one I love, I'm a huge fan of. It ties into body image. We have a body image group in our day program. We have a body image group in our evening program. And we have an outpatient 1 time a week body image group. It is absolutely part of this process of connecting to your authentic self and not defining yourself through your image or your connection to your body. So please wear comfortable clothing through this holiday season. To be honest with everyone, we talk about clothing choices that we make, and is there a form of self-punishment in that? Is there a form of reinforcing feeling bad about yourself, or just making yourself feel uncomfortable, honestly, for no reason at all? So please do the work to try to decrease that judgment around, flowy clothes, comfortable clothes. If you're going through the recovery process, it's normal that your body is going to shift. As we continue to develop as human beings, our bodies continue to shift. That's just a fact. And I want to encourage you, if this is the holiday season where you can, throw away some clothes that are more connected to your disorder than not. We always support and back our clients in doing that. I know it's a hard step. You might not want to do it alone. You might want to do it with the support of a therapist or a dietitian. But think about that wardrobe for the holiday season, when you're probably going to be either online shopping for others. Get some things for yourself. It can really make it can really make all the difference.
I just want to pop in here quick. We had 2 questions come up just to go back to that self-soothing box we were talking about before.
Yes.
We had 2 questions just asking to clarify a little bit more about how to create one, what would go in it, just a few more examples.
Yes, sorry, that was when the lights went out. Thank you for that.
It's all good.
So sense of smell is going to be really important. So if you find, lavender soothing, if you find like peppermint oil, like really helps you stay, really alert and connected to the space. You want to kind of do your work to figure out what scents can kind of work best for you. If, maybe there's a certain like perfume or scent of a loved one that you're not able to be with at the actual holiday party, and you really wish that they were there with you when you're seeing your family. Maybe you want to have an item, with that perfume on it. Definitely any objects that can bring up a different scent and a scent that works for you to either feel calming or alert is going to be super helpful during the holidays. Tension and stress is going to go up, and usually that looks like this. The shoulders are going up towards the ears. So you might want to have a little back massager in there. You might want to have, go if you like the weighted blanket or a smaller version of that. Some clients will have some type of like heating pad, something that can warm up, or something that stays cold, just so that you can ground yourself from a sensory point of view in your way. Music can also be helpful here. So maybe having a playlist that you can turn to. I feel like I'm dating myself that, we no longer really have the iPod in the box like we used to. You probably have that on your phone now. Maybe a loved one wrote you a letter to help you get through the holidays. It could be even anything that reminds you of your therapist and your dietitian. Anything, again, that's going to feel reassuring or grounding to you. Those are my top ideas. Anything else come to mind for you, Quinn?
No, I feel like those are the big ones.
Color pencils and like a book, if that works for you, to like color in mandalas and kind of be anything that's going to help you be mindful and present. It's definitely what we recommend. All right, over to scheduling meals and snacks.
So scheduling meals and snacks, since I'm the dietitian, is a good thing for me to talk about. That can look different for different people. Sometimes certain meals or snacks might be more difficult to get in during the day. So those are the ones that you want to really focus on when it comes to scheduling. It might be like lunch and dinner are really easy for me, but breakfast and snacks seem really difficult. So those are the ones that I want to make sure that I set a specific time for myself during the day that I'm going to have those by. If you feel like setting alarms for yourself are going to be useful, then setting an alarm on your phone can be a good tool, putting it on your calendar. I also have some clients where they might set that alarm on their phone and then immediately just dismiss it, and then it completely goes out of their head. So if it's more helpful to have something like written down, have it on your fridge, have it in different places so that there's a variety of places where it's coming up. That can also be useful so that it's not just like I have an alarm on my phone and then as soon as it dings, I immediately tell it to go away and that nothing happens. So scheduling things in like meals and snacks, I think especially day of for holidays, and we'll talk about this a little bit more on another slide, but it can be hard to eat consistently on the days of the holidays when you know that you're going to be having a holiday meal. So especially I think on those days, very important to make sure that you're eating consistently throughout the day. And again, what meals and snacks look like will be different for each individual. So checking in with a dietitian if you have one to go over what it is that those meals and snacks can look like for you when you schedule them in during the day.
Yeah, and we can do that moment of psychoeducation in case there's some people that are new to this process or not really sure what treatment looks like. That consistent eating is such a cornerstone of recovery. And if a holiday season where you don't go into a meal overly hungry, something that could potentially increase your chances of behaviors or just not being present due to, not having eaten anything throughout the day, or giving into those urges of restriction, wherever you fall on the spectrum. Consistent eating applies to all of that. You do want to have something throughout the day, especially on the actual holidays where you know your interactions are going to be more stressful.
Definitely.
So I want to talk a little bit about Recovery Record too. That's a free resource that everyone can access. Talking about reminders on the phone and.
Yeah, totally. So Recovery Record is the app that we typically use with our clients here at Balance in order to log food intake. You don't have to be in treatment or in a program or even really working with clinicians in order to use Recovery Record. You can just use it on your own. I do find it to be really helpful to use with my clients because it's a way for us to already have that data collection point from the past week or so where I can go on before a session with somebody and look through their recovery record logs just so that I'm familiarizing myself with what the main things were that were coming up for them that week. So we don't waste time just doing a bunch of 24-hour recalls over and over again. The really lovely thing too about Recovery Record for anybody who has not used it is besides just logging your food, it also gives you the opportunity to log things like your hunger and fullness levels before and after meals, feelings log. So what was the mood that you were going into a meal with, time of day. So it's a great way to make connections between, okay, I noticed where I was feeling really sad one day and that influenced the eating for the rest of the day. So making those connections can be really useful. I also really just like it as an accountability tool. So again, even if you're not using Recovery Record with a clinician, just to have something where you're documenting what food intake is looking like for you during the day, or what eating and exercise and behaviors, to log all of those things can be a great way to hold yourself accountable and to also then be able to share that information with other people as needed.
Yeah. And this is the time to identify what your favorite self-care activities are and get them involved in your plan. You can do this for, the spectrum of the whole week of Thanksgiving, the week of Hanukkah, the week of Christmas, whatever holiday that you celebrate. Maybe you're traveling somewhere you haven't been in a while, especially coming out of COVID, and you really like to take a walk around a particular lake. And you want to hold yourself accountable to that because that's going to be something just for you, not what the rest of the family wants to do for the whole entire trip. Make sure you identify what those are. It'd be great if it comes to you today and you can write it down in your recovery plan. Please schedule time for yourself. Yes, it's a time of gathering, but we keep talking about figuring out what's realistic, and it's not realistic, or we don't recommend having, 12-hour days packed with friends or loved ones where you don't get any downtime. The other thing I want to say about Recovery Record is just in case, you're a New Yorker and maybe you can only get a couple self-soothing things in your pocket or your bag or your backpack. Like you might not have like a car or a place to go to where you can take out a self-soothing box. Recovery Record can be downloaded on your phone, and there are meditations on there, and just helpful tips for you to know that you're connected to a community and you're not on your own.
So just to go a little bit more over self-care, definitely, like Danielle was saying, finding those self-care activities that you really enjoy. Another thing that I always like to emphasize when it comes to self-care is that self-care can look like very small things too. Sometimes self-care is just like, I took a shower today and that was self-care. Or I brushed my hair today. I brushed my teeth today. I put on clothing today. Like those things during the day can also be elements of self-care. So don't think that they have to be like these big grandiose things that you're doing for yourself, or like the stereotypical things like I'm going to do a face mask or something for self-care. They can also just be small things that you do each day in order to take care of yourself, because that's really what self-care is. Gather some inspiration of why recovery is worth it to have handy the day of. So I know Danielle had brought this up earlier, but knowing the why for your own recovery and having those internal motivators for recovery can be very helpful, because as much as you can have support systems or clinicians who are really wanting recovery for you, if we don't have those internal motivators for ourselves, that can make it a lot more difficult. So having those whys for yourself to turn to of this is the reason why I'm in recovery. This is why I'm doing this work for myself. And plan fun activities, kind of going off what we had talked about before. It's the holiday season, should also be fun. So trying to plan those things around the holiday season that really make you happy, whether that's ice skating, baking with somebody, massages, whatever things that make the holiday season feel special and enjoyable for you, plan those in. And if you go and you do that by yourself, that's cool too. If it's like, I'm going to go take myself to a movie one day because that's something I really enjoy. Treat yourself to something. It doesn't have to just be plans that you're making with other people during the holiday season.
Yeah, really. And when you can, practice the interpersonal communication. So I totally agree with Quinn. If you want to do it by yourself, and the only way that you can keep yourself accountable to getting that activity in is just to commit to doing it. You're going to leave the friends and family. You're going to go do it. I totally support you. But if it's something you're hoping to do with an old friend or one particular family member, please communicate about it. You can find yourself feeling really down or hard on yourself if you're like, no one asked me what I wanted to do. And you can feel pretty defeated after the holidays. So we're talking about planning. So make sure you reach out, to maybe that aunt or that grandparent that you feel more, comfortable with, or have less thoughts when you're with those person. Those are the people we want to identify. So that if you're, going to the store with your grandma, that you're going to have an hour that's a little quieter, or maybe you're just going to a coffee shop or something like that, but you have that scheduled in. During the event, major areas to navigate: food, body concerns, and family friends dynamics. We'll go into that a little bit more.
So let's start with food. So obviously, if you have a meal plan, trying to stick to that meal plan. I know not everybody is either like working with a dietitian, or maybe you have actually transitioned off of something like a meal plan and are trying to work on things like intuitive eating with your dietitian. Whatever that looks like for you right now in recovery, try to stick to, again, as much of that structure that you can for yourself. A lot of times with my clients, especially during a time where they know that things might be more difficult, even if they haven't been on a meal plan for a while, going back to that meal plan can be really useful. So even if you have transitioned off of something like a meal plan, having it handy in case you need it during the day can be a great tool to have. Definitely aim to eat regular meals and snacks throughout the entire day. Again, there can be a lot of the talk of like, well, I know I'm going to have a holiday dinner later in the day, so I don't want to eat as much earlier in the day. Really try to maintain consistency of eating throughout the day. So getting in those meals and snacks, even if you know that you're going to have a larger meal later in the day or going to be with family and friends later in the day, maintaining consistency throughout, that's not only going to help with making sure that you're meeting your nutritional needs, but it'll also help with things like emotional and mental regulation for yourself so that you feel like you can handle things that are coming up for you. If you can, create like a little goodie bag for yourself. If you have snacks that you really like, pack those snacks for yourself. So you're like, okay, I know the very least I have things that I can turn to if I need to, if other people aren't going to have a snack right now, but I know that I need a snack right now. I know that I have something available for myself, so that you don't have long periods of time, especially if you're away from the house, where you don't have access to things like snacks or meals. But we also want to try to challenge ourselves somewhat during the holiday season. So not necessarily just relying on those safe foods if you are packing food for yourself, but also enjoying some of the holiday foods that might not be as available during other parts of the year. Foods that you really enjoy. Leaning, like when we talk about intuitive eating, one of the main things is the satisfaction factor of eating foods that you really like. So if there's a special holiday food that you really like, allowing yourself to have that food so that you get the enjoyment of that. It's also part of enjoying the holiday season. I really like this idea of approaching food with curiosity. So it's like, how does it feel to have that food? What thoughts and feelings are coming up for myself? I'm always a fan. All my clients hear me say the term non-judgmental curiosity all the time. So even if you notice that thoughts are coming up and you're like, oh, that's interesting, I'm having a negative thought or feeling right now that's coming up, instead of being hard on yourself about the fact that that thought is coming up, being like, oh, that's interesting. Can I document that? Can I bring that to my therapist or bring that to my dietitian next time I see them so that we can have a conversation about it? Or can I write that in recovery record? So trying to approach these situations with as much non-judgmental curiosity as you can.
Yeah, and I can't help but mention, we all know the first holiday that's coming up, like I said at the beginning of webinar, is Thanksgiving. It's 2 weeks away. And maybe you want to take this time to really look at kind of the cost benefit comparison, because a lot of times we are going against the grain. We are absolutely fighting against diet culture because we know it doesn't work and it's not good for anyone, has not proven to be good for anyone. So really, you know, what is the benefit of following that diet culture and not eating all day and having one meal and then feeling however you feel after that meal? Try this holiday consistent eating, whatever your dietitian is telling you is appropriate for, you know, for dinner, for a holiday meal, that you can match that, and you don't have to do what you've done all the holidays before.
Yeah. I also want to, because I feel like the concept of fullness comes up a lot, especially around holidays like Thanksgiving, where it's such a food-centered holiday. Knowing that fullness is a very normal body sensation, that is just a signal from your body that it's satiated, that it's had food, it's sending that signal to your brain. So we have so much judgment that can come up around signals of both hunger and fullness, but knowing that that is a totally normal signal. We also know that fullness doesn't last forever. So even if that feeling of fullness feels uncomfortable or you have some level of physical discomfort, that goes away. You know that over time that will dissipate. So reminding yourself of that too.
Looking at your relationship to your body, look for early warning signs that can lead to unhelpful behaviors. If you're feeling your thoughts increase, if you're feeling them get more rapid, think about a place where you can go. Think about that person that you can resource to, you know, decrease that. Maybe you need to, where you're at right now, use some distraction after a meal, or engage in a game with a loved one or an activity with a loved one. Whether we're talking about meals and food or buying clothes for parties or just being more social in general, you might have a spike in feeling some body dissatisfaction. Normalize that you're not alone in that, and ask for help, ask for tools, ask for tips. Wear that comfortable clothes and the clothes that you feel good in. Sometimes it feels just good to have on a new sweater or new pair of leggings or whatever direction you're going. And allow yourself to enjoy that without making body judgments. Boundaries, I think everyone really can put that on their holiday recovery plan. You know, you'll define it differently for yourself. But know those amber flags, those yellow flags that could turn into red flags, that you need to walk away from someone consistently talking about food or their own body, just things that are not helpful to you.
Yeah, so if you notice that you're having strong urges, again, having that support person. If you know that there's a specific person who's going to be around during the holiday, knowing how to get in touch with them, whether that's they're going to be at a holiday event with you, or it's a person that you can reach through text or over the phone, that you can have, again, whether that's a clinician, friend, family member, utilizing your toolbox, not only just like actual physical box of things like Danielle was talking about, but also know that you have a bunch of tools that you can have learned in recovery. Again, I like to have my clients have an actual list of what those tools are, so that in the moment, if they're really struggling with coming up, like what tool will be the most useful for me in this moment, they can reflect back on a list that they have of all of the tools that they have since being in recovery, so that you can reflect back on that in the moment. Have a supportive exit strategy in case you feel overwhelmed. So if you're thinking, okay, I'm having this family event and it might get to the point where I'm feeling too overwhelmed and I can't be here anymore, what is my exit strategy? Is that just telling everybody that I might have to leave early, just letting you know, just in case, whether that's having a friend call you and being like, you have to get out right now, having those things that you can have so that you have an exit strategy for yourself. Also, maybe if there's a safe space available for you wherever you are, where you can get away even just for 10 or 15 minutes if you need to. I've had clients who will go and just be like, hey, I have to make a quick phone call, or I forgot something in my car, and just go sit in their car for 15 minutes because that's the time that they need in order to regroup and bring down any level of anxiety that they might be having. So not even just an exit strategy for actually fully leaving a place, but also an exit strategy for just being by yourself sometimes for a little bit. And we have 2 resources listed here. Again, our contact information in case you need it, but there's also an emotional support hotline that's 24/7, because we know that places like Balance or other clinicians might not be available 24/7. So having something like this hotline, if you again want to take a picture of this or write this phone number down either in your telephone or on a piece of paper, having something like that where you know that there's somebody that you can talk to at any point during the day can be really useful.
Agreed. I know we're coming to the top of the hour, so if you have any questions from the webinar that you want to pop in the chat, please do that now. Like we said, Balance is only going to be closed for Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day. Otherwise, we will be available to talk to you, let you know if our programs are the right place for you. We are opening up some new seats due to the wait lists that have been happening. That announcement's going to go out on Monday, but you guys are kind of getting the hot off the press news that we are opening some seats. We know the holiday season is coming and it's going to be tough. If you happen to be, a college or a high school student that's going to be on break, if you want to reach out to help now, it's always a really good time. And also a lot of working professionals, we find maybe that your job's a little more flexible during this time, and whether it's a combination of, taking some vacation time during the holidays where you can get some support, or, just getting that encouragement from Balance that this does fall under a medical leave, and we're here to support you. We're here to support you through that. I'm going to hop to the last slides, and then I see some questions, Allison.
Okay, so setting boundaries. Again, like Danielle was saying, this can be one of the biggest things that comes up for a lot of us during the holiday season. So coming up with some examples of things that you can say to either friends or family members if you're around them and you need to set some boundaries. So things like, please don't make comments on other people's appearance during this holiday, or I'm really looking forward to getting together for the holidays to make it as enjoyable as possible for me. I'd rather we don't talk about weight or food. So having those already kind of like predetermined responses that you can have for boundary setting can be useful. I also know that sometimes somebody might not be at a place in their recovery where they feel like they can set a firm boundary with family or friends. So having other ways that you can either leave the conversation or just change the subject in the conversation if it feels like setting a boundary is not as realistic. Also, depending on who the person is that you're talking to, maybe you're not as close with that person. Maybe you're at a party and you don't actually know the person you're talking to and they start saying something that feels triggering. So finding those alternative ways where you can divert what the conversation is going towards so that it feels more comfortable for you if it's feeling triggering. But practicing setting those boundaries as much as you can, and know that you deserve to have boundaries, that you're allowed to have those boundaries, and you can set those boundaries with family and friends, whoever it is that you need to set those boundaries with, if that's what's best for you.
We actually have a question coming in regarding, I think, some of that boundary setting. And I think what they mean here is dealing with being seen as rude due to self-care, or even sometimes I think a big worry for some is when setting boundaries, you don't want to come across as rude, and the confrontation of it can be tricky. So maybe what is some encouragement for just that fear of like sounding rude when setting boundaries and when advocating for yourself?
I think the exercise that I talked about of writing down all the different ways to say no, and you can also have that on a spectrum from the most passive to the most aggressive. There is a little bit of cognitive reframe in there in terms of like, someone struggling specifically with an eating disorder is going to feel guilty about expressing their needs and requesting that boundary. And we also have the opportunity to shift the family dynamic, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But like Quinn says, you do deserve that boundary and that self-respect for alone time. Something that happens in the recovery process, you find the people that are truly going to be in your community for the rest of your life moving forward. And there's going to be some people that can adapt and some people that can't, but it's worth finding out what that community is going to be so that your lifestyle can be more sustainable, so that you're having more joy than you're having stress and concern, and that you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah. I would also say sometimes fact checking whether you're actually being rude or whether that person is just not used to you setting boundaries with them. Because if it's a new thing for them, for you to set a boundary, they might be like, oh my God, that seems so rude that they're doing that, when in actuality, you should be setting a boundary and they're just not used to having that boundary set for them. So sometimes I think of it more as like, if your friend or somebody that you loved was saying the same thing, would you think it's rude, or are you only thinking that it's rude because it's coming from yourself? So having some of that fact checking of, am I actually being rude, or am I just setting a boundary and people aren't responding in an appropriate way to me setting a boundary?
Exactly. And like Quinn said, have that graceful exit strategy and conversation. So, maybe it's, I need to have some time for myself, which I 100% encourage you to say. But if you're not there yet in that interpersonal relationship, I have a call, I have an appointment or check-in with my therapist, or I have to touch base with a friend, whatever you need to say to remove yourself from the increased stress and stimulation, please do that. All right. I know there's a couple things that we didn't get to today. These are some more journaling prompts around defining your exit strategy. So I would just list exit strategy. I think we have given some tips around that, around different ways to say no, trusted people that you can go to. We're really highlighting know what adequate support is going to be around, who's going to be away. And find those positive activities for yourself, whether that's a self-care you enjoy or setting up a volunteer moment, scheduling additional therapy sessions, having time to journal or draw, whatever works for you. This is our Balance Space. We are the first treatment center in New York back in person, and we're really happy to say it. Our day treatment program and weeknight program are back in person. We do also have virtual seats if you happen to be in a different area of New York and you want to log on. That's something we can still accommodate. We have a Saturday program that can be done standalone or in addition to the other programs. We have 5 awesome outpatient groups. We have a weekly food and mood group that Quinn runs, body image group by one of our therapists, LGBTQAI group that Quinn runs, a men's group, and also an intuitive eating group. We talked about this outpatient virtual support if you do find yourself waiting on a wait list for a higher level of care, nutrition counseling and meal supports, and just having an idea of what you need to work on before you start treatment. We're happy to clarify that for you so you feel like you are starting the process in the way that works for you with the supports that you have. Please save our number. Please give us a call. And then this is also a place on the web where you can go and schedule an individual. We do free 20-minute consultative calls to see if Balance is the right place for you, to answer specific questions about what we offer and what our intake process is like.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle and Quinn. And thank you all for joining us again. We do have some time to answer any remaining questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can in the remaining few minutes we do have. So I do have one coming through right now from Kaylee. She asks, How do you go about telling a newer significant other about your eating disorder, especially if you're going to each other's families for the holidays? That can bring up some worries.
Absolutely. It's actually one of the steps that we do in our intake process, because it is a really hard conversation to have. So the main thing you want to know before you go into that conversation is a few words to describe what you're struggling with, what you need, and what's not helpful. Those are my three main points I would give to you. Journal, write about it, use your therapy session to kind of talk about that. I don't recommend like going in with a script or anything like that, but you want to know those 3 points, what you feel comfortable sharing. I don't really think it's necessary to go into details of specific food behaviors or what you eat or what you don't eat, unless that's going to affect your ability to complete meals at a loved one's house. And the things that that don't work. And often that's people commenting about your food. The more that you can tell the loved one that you have a therapist and dietitian that you're working with and you have a holiday treatment plan in place, will allow people to take the information that you're giving them, that you have an eating disorder or that you're struggling with body image, without overly worrying about you or kind of going into that, food policing or just really, doing a lot of hovering around that. So be able to say what is triggering to you and, that you have a supportive team in place that you talk to about this. But you want to share those tips that we reviewed today that will be helpful for the holiday, not making comments about body, food, giving you space as needed.
Yeah. And I know that for
walking away from family to do that session.
Yeah. Also for some of my clients, if they don't feel fully comfortable spending the time to like educate somebody on either like their eating disorder or what recovery looks like, having some like go-to resources, whether that's like the NITA website, or I know at Balance, we have like some handouts that I'll give some of my clients that like literally just explain like, these are things that I feel comfortable talking about, and these are things I don't feel comfortable talking about. So having some things that you can refer somebody to, if you don't feel like you have the ability to fully spend the time to educate somebody on something, having other resources that you can just give them that they can go to help educate themselves.
Awesome. Let's see. Yeah, feel free to drop any other questions we have. It looks like we have a question from Mallory. She says, it feels so easy to give in to the eating disorder and relapse during this season. I don't have a lot of motivation to be super active in recovery because I'm so uncomfortable in my own skin, which is totally valid, and we hear you. How do I make the right choices, and how do I decide to go the other way rather than listening to the eating disorder?
I know one thing that I do with my clients is list out relapse red flags. So and we do that in program 2, where we'll go over relapse prevention, but having those red flags for yourself of like, I notice if I'm like isolating more, or if certain behaviors come up for myself, that could be a red flag for a relapse. So I think knowing what those relapse red flags are, and again, like we were talking about in the presentation, is knowing what your supports are at the time, so that if something is coming up and there are those red flags, that you have supports to reach out to, that you can contact if you need to.
And also going back to the slide around your why for recovery. Sometimes at first you have to rely on external motivation before that intrinsic motivation comes around. So if you can identify a few things, even though you are feeling really uncomfortable in your own skin, and that's where the eating disorder behaviors are swooping in to try to make you feel more comfortable. If you broaden the lens to look at the big picture, how much of your day are you really thinking about food, body, and maybe weight? What's happening with your concentration and your focus, either at work or when a friend that you really like to spend time with is talking to you and your thoughts are starting to drift in another area. If you are interested in having a family and don't have one right now, what do you want to make sure that you work on with yourself to kind of stop that? I call it intergenerational trauma, because I really believe that's what's happening. And that, I know that's a whole nother webinar, but I can't help but get it in there, because there is a genetic component to eating disorders, or even just someone that embraces in diet culture that gets passed along, and some of those expectations that are not realistic and actually more harmful than helpful for your body and your mental health, really do get passed along, and someone has to stop it along the way. So whatever your motivation is, or whatever you don't like or you want to change, that can often come in and battle with those eating disorder urges.
Would also recommend the book 8 Keys for Recovering from an Eating Disorder. Has a great section kind of towards the beginning of the book that talks about motivation and talks about like where you feel like you are in your own recovery. So if that's something that's coming up for you, that's a resource that I think could be helpful.
Awesome. Thank you. It looks like that's all the questions we have for right now. If there's any others that come in as we close out today, that's totally fine. But thank you all for joining us. And thank you to Danielle and Quinn for taking the time to, discuss these really helpful strategies to all of us. We have shared some resources in the chat. One of them being how to reach out for a free consultation call. And also keep an eye out for our emails. Chances are, if you're in this webinar, you're on our email list. And we have lots of exciting announcements and free resources coming your way through email as well. Also, I just want to mention our free support groups are hosted several times a month, and you can register via email, or I'm also going to drop the link to that as well in the chat. So you can save those links if you ever need them. And then lastly, you will be sent a survey when you leave today. So if you could please take a moment to fill that out, we would be very thankful. And it looks like that's all we have for today. So thank you, everybody, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.